This is the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel. Today is Friday the 19th of December. My name is Neil Saravanamutu. As always, I'm joined by Joanne Cianello and John Willing. Hello to you both.
Hello, Neil.
Hey, Neil.
So we're just a few days out from Christmas. Have you got all your shopping done?
Well, I plan to pull out of the parking lot here at Rogers quickly and go to Canadian Tire after the taping, so the answer is no.
Well, it's good that Rogers Studio, where we are today, as a special year-end surprise, it's in Westboro. Lots of good shopping here in Kitchissippi Ward, and but yes, the mall is close by. In fact, my husband is at Canadian Tire right now with a long list of things.
Oh, what about you, Neil?
You know what? I have to admit that Amazon has been a great friend of mine this year. So that's I've gotten my Christmas shopping done. But as Joanne mentions, we are not in our usual location. As our viewers can see, we are here at the RogersTV studio. So a big thanks to Rogers for hosting us today in this lovely setting. And we're taking advantage of that to do our year-end, our year-in review episode. So today we've had a fairly substantive discussion at Ottawa City Hall committee this week. However, we're not going to talk about that. That was the Housing Committee's discussion about the new zoning bylaw. We're going to wait till that comes to Council. Undoubtedly, there'll be some walk-on motions at that meeting. So we'll talk about it after the Council discussion in January. But today, we wanted to talk about some of the big trends that have happened in 2026, some of the or 2025, and some of what we think might carry through to 2026. So if I were to ask you both, what is one big issue that arose in 2025 that you would really like to highlight and keep an eye out for 2026? So Joanne, why don't we start with you? Your big trend.
Yeah, so for me, and I mean, when I was a reporter, now as a City Hall watcher, someone who cares about local government, transparency and accountability. It's so important to engendering trust in government. Make sure people can see what their government is doing, how they make decisions. And one thing I found is that this council, I don't know if you noticed, John, we used to cover City Hall, but this council goes in camera a lot, like a lot. And so I thought, how much do they go in camera? So I went to count it. In 3 years, this council, under Mayor Mark Sutcliffe and all the councillors who always agree to go in camera, they have gone in camera more times than in 10 years of Jim Watson being the mayor. So I went back to count during the Integrity Commissioner reports. They count that out. I didn't include the committees, but council alone from September 2012 to November 2022, which was the end of the term, council went in camera 23 times, and almost all of those were for things like HR, like you're hiring a new senior leader, or for a collective bargaining agreement that was immediately reported out afterwards. So OC Transpo union, what is their wage increase? So 23 times. This council 29 times. In only 3 years. And most of those were for really substantive issues. It wasn't just HR or hiring. It wasn't just a collective agreement. So you'll be shocked to hear that they mostly went in camera on the LRT. They went on for the Confederation line 11 times. And for something called legal updates, LRT legal update. What is that about exactly? I don't know. It's very, very vague. 7 times. So on the one hand, it's good. I'm not saying that councillors should not ever go in camera. There's litigation, there's disputes. But on the other hand, I'm not arguing that the lawyers should come out into open session and say, here's our legal strategy of how we're going to combat the Rideau Transit Group or whoever else is possibly in these disputes, which we don't know about. But there's a lot of difference between not giving out your legal strategy and saying nothing. Right? And so I have to say, if you guys please have this discussion over the holidays. I'm sure people want to talk about the LRT legal disputes over Christmas, but I bet you that most people have no idea that there are still disputes going on Confederation Line, which has been open for 6 years, and that hundreds of millions of dollars are at stake. So I don't actually understand why people don't, why the council doesn't come out to say, hey, here's what the dispute is about, here's who's arguing what, and we're keeping on. We're spending a lot of money. John, I saw in researching this, one of your old stories from 2021, that council had asked for $15 million for more to pay for legal fees. And this budget for 2026, another $5 million. There's other issues like this Taggart Miller landfill deal. Not only is the amount that we might be paying for it secret, they went in camera, and now it's unclear if we're even buying the site. Like it is, they had a discussion in camera in November, very contentious issue, and we have no idea what's happening. So I asked a bunch of questions, and the city lawyers have said they are not allowed to answer the most basic things, like when did you sign the non-disclosure agreement? Who signed it? What? Did you ask council for permission to sign it? Can't say. Apparently cannot say. So remember, a Taggart lobbyist brought this to the mayor's office, the idea of buying this land. So it's not a secret to the owner that the city is interested in buying that land. So who is this non-disclosure agreement protecting exactly? Apparently us, from information. More recently, on the new Central Library at Asoke, it's delayed. Why? We don't know. They had to go in camera to discuss that. That makes no sense to me. And there's even some other lack of transparency issues. So on Lansdowne, the request for proposals, the city said in 2024 that report was supposed to be released, as soon as it was issued. No, now it's not being released until 30 days after the close. Apparently, that earlier report was a mistake. So that's not useful. We've already decided to see it afterwards. Collective agreements for OC Transpo and CUPE, they were ratified by council in February. The details are still not out. I asked about it this week, and I was told by staff, that the lawyers are still doing their due diligence. Well, the unions have ratified it. Council has ratified it. It's a little late to do your due
What's
diligence.
there left to decide,
Exactly.
right? Yeah.
And even things like council, like routine disclosure on council. The last time that the council member office expenses were updated was June. The gift registry hasn't been updated since March. Now, this is a long list of stuff, but it's just to show you that it's not a one-off thing. It seems to be a trend that there's less disclosure at the city, whether that's on purpose, whether that is just things are disorganized. But either way, I don't think it's a good trend. And I'll be interested to see if next year being an election year, people want to be more open, or because disclosure does mean sometimes it's politically uncomfortable. Are they going to double down on maybe having things in camera? So I don't know. What do you think, John?
Well, people might ask, why do we care? So what, they're going in camera? So what, they're going into secret session all the time? Well, I mean, the citizens need to know how their municipal government functions. And I agree with you, Joanne. I think that council needs to find a way to at least offer some broad strokes on the issues that they're talking about in camera. Lawsuits are public. They're public documents, right? There's nothing that just discloses the fact that maybe the city's getting sued, or is the plaintiff in a suit too. Something as simple as that. You talked about the salary increases for some bargaining units at the city. Why is that not being reported out? That's really odd to me as well. So when people see their elected politicians go into secret session more often than not, they get a curiosity, but then also a skepticism too about what's going on,
right?
And a distrust.
Even though there might not be anything, untoward happening.
Yeah.
You have to think, well, why are they actually not talking about it? Why are they not telling us the basic things that are going on?
Well, so I did the math while you were talking.
Okay.
And it appears that this council has gone into in-camera sessions 10 times more often than during the Watson years. So, I mean, you pointed out that there are...
Yes, it was 2.3 times per year during those Watson
That's
years.
right.
And here it's like 9.
Yeah.
So.
And just to say, it's discouraging to hear about the low-hanging fruit, right? The gift registry updates, the office spending updates. That's stuff that you would hope that's made available in a timely fashion. And you're telling me, since March, some of the updates haven't been done on the website. That's disappointing to hear. And those were changes brought in under former Mayor Jim Watson, right? Although the transparency package, that we have information actually reported proactively by the city onto the city's website. And if there's a delay, then that's just kind of we're clawing it back a bit, right?
I did that counting because it has seemed anecdotally to me that the culture is slightly different. I mean, say what you will about Jim Watson, we had our disagreements, but he did bring up a huge integrity package. Most things were discussed in camera. Same thing with the clerk, always pressed to have things done out in open session, and Mayor Watson also agreed with that. And it seemed to me that I was thinking, wow, this doesn't seem to have the same I don't want to say commitment to openness. And so I went back and checked. I'm like, oh, this is long. And I left some things off that very long list.
Well, listen, first of all, thank you for doing that analysis, because I've never seen this before, never heard of it before, to actually see the numbers in black and white. And I think we had a sense that this council was going into in-camera meetings more often, but couldn't really evaluate. So it's important that we've got that data point. And so the question becomes why? And I think I see two reasons here. Number one, we've got a city hall that wants to be controlling the narrative much more clearly, and whenever there's any sort of negative news, that gets put out of the spotlight. So using in camera as one potential method to getting that out of the spotlight. But number two is I think that there's just a lack of councillors that seem to be pushing back and saying, hey, wait a minute, do we have to go in camera on this, or do we have a choice? And I'm not even sure that those questions are being asked.
Yeah, and this is what's interesting. If you look at the Municipal Act, as I do on a regular basis, of course, who doesn't? But they do give a list. The Act gives a list of scenarios in which council can go in camera, but they don't have to. So I think it's important to know they are not in camera under any legislation. They are in camera through choice, and I've never heard anyone say no, because you could vote no to go in camera, or actually try to make a motion on the way out to say, I move that we, try to release some information. Yeah. And I do wonder how much this council looks on how to use their procedure to make information, their procedural rules, I should say, to make information more available.
It just seems there's more deference to staff too these days, I think. If staff say you should go on camera, certainly your own legal staff, then I think as a councillor, especially as a councillor with not a lot of experience, you're going to say yes every time, because you don't want to blow open the city's case on a big issue, whether it be the dump, whether it be LRT. Yeah. We know one other big legal file that's been in the past has been the green bin, remember Orga World, that contract. I was trying to think of the time when all of a sudden we saw a culture change around council about guarding information rather than proactively letting it come out. And I was wondering if those Orga World years were the start of a time where we're seeing less information being made available to the public. And as you're reporting now, Joanne, we're seeing that more and more this term of council too.
I think part of it was the LRT inquiry as well. The LRT inquiry, part of it, what came out was that the mayor had information that the rest of council didn't have. And so, to give council some credit and to give staff some credit, they are trying to keep council more up to date on what is happening, but that doesn't mean you don't tell the public anything. Yeah,
but John, I want to come back to a point that you made, that some new councillors that just don't have the experience, but what they can and cannot do. I mean, let's not forget that we've got by that definition, a new mayor also. And I think the mayor is being very, very deferential to staff. And setting the tone for the rest of council. I worry that's what's going on here. So I guess to close this off, Joanne, maybe for 2026, what would you like to see? What would you suggest to council members that are aware of this perhaps for the first time, and what they should do about it?
I think that they should try to push back and also get informed through the clerk's office, people who used to work at the city. They will know what it is that you can actually say. Now, once you're in camera, you can't say anything, of course, but can you formulate a motion while you're in camera to say, I want to move that we report out these certain facts. And you work on that with in camera in order to have that, get the support from your colleagues. Also, there's a lot of so-called direction to staff given in camera, and I have to wonder how much of those should be motions that are voted on outside of the in-camera sessions. They should be voted in open session. The landfill site purchase is an excellent example. There was a direction to staff, but we're not sure if that direction was go off and buy a big piece of land for a landfill. And so, councillors, you're allowed to vote no to go in camera. You're allowed to argue not to do that. And certainly, I would like to see that they use the procedures that exist at council, specifically to have an open government, to have a accountable government, and try to use those to report out more.
Okay, great. Thank you, Joanne. John, I want to turn to you. What was your big trend for 2025 that might have implications into 2026?
I have the spiciest issue, Neil. It's return to office.
Yes.
It's return to office. Now, this is something we started talking about on the pod earlier in the year, right? One of the first things we discussed, we're trying to look into our crystal balls and find out what big issue is going to dominate the agenda for 2025. I don't know if return to office dominated, but I think it's just been one of those things that people all across the city are talking about. And so that's my big issue for 2025. You know, the city of Ottawa is making sure all their employees are working, those who have office jobs, in the office starting in 2026. And now we're hearing the federal government talk about wanting to get more of their employees back into their offices too, looking ahead, according to some reporting, to 2027, to going back 5 days a week. Okay, so what does that mean for the things we're interested in, municipal government? Well, lots of stuff, especially when it comes to the transportation file. We're talking about our road network. We're talking about OC Transpo. Now, on public transit, could be good news for City Hall. You've got more revenue coming in if more people are commuting every day to work and back to home. But is the public transit system going to be taxed, overtaxed? Yes. We don't know. And those questions came up, right, during the recent budget process. There were some questions put to OC Transpo staff saying, look, if more workers come back in 2026, are we going to be okay with our transit service? And so this is going to be something huge to watch in 2026. It could be good news for the coffers at City Hall, but it could be some bad news for the transportation system, the road network, the capacity for our buses and our trains too, but just also the vibe that's in the city. It's the biggest thing on people's minds, certainly if you work in the public service. And so I'm wondering, in your circles, Neil, in your circles, are your friends and family talking about return to office and what that means for the people in their orbit?
If you're a public servant, it is issue number one.
Yeah.
Issue number 1, 2, and 3, probably, for a lot of people. So yeah, everyone's concerned about this, and I think it's fair, right? Because people have learned certain work patterns over the last couple of years. And what we're being told is return to office, and we're putting a lot of emphasis on being present. Whereas people are saying, well, isn't like being productive what actually matters? And what happens if I'm more productive at home or in a different context? And now we're just being judged on whether we're there or not. I think that's a concern a lot of people are expressing. But of course, it's all the issues that you mentioned too, right? Like there's these productivity issues, but can the city even manage this? Like, I think I'm with you, Joanne, that I have a lot of skepticism that OC Transpo can manage this. Of course, we don't have the downtown parking or the road network to get everyone in, so something's going to break.
Well, I was just going to say, like, if you are driving around in the rush hour or taking transit, do the roads seem like really open to you? Like, you know, or are they just super congested, right? Of course, everybody is complaining about congestion now. The LRT... Hopefully, the eastern end will open up in 2026, but the western end is not going to be open it's supposed to be open in 2027, but we'll see. I mean, you know, delays are very likely. And so the idea of all the city workers and all of the federal workers back to office up to 5 days a week, right now, this is, you know, open reporting back in November, we're short 20 buses on OC Transpo, right? And so the bus, like, if you think about being 20 buses short every single day, that's a lot of canceled trips. And, you know, you heard the last transit meeting, people are very distressed about the reliability of the system, including the councillors, by the way, but they're having trouble literally finding mechanics, getting physical buses, like buying buses. And so how is that going to work? I mean, I do hope that if there is a plan for the feds to go back, they are going to wait to say, okay, let's make sure the transit is a bit better. I don't know. I think, and it was really controversial, John, you'll remember, when this was announced at the city, because the city manager made an announcement at a press conference with the mayor standing beside her, but then later they said it wasn't a political decision, and I thought, wow, it looks political. There's a press conference happening. And I think there's a lot of employees were taken aback, because that's the first they ever heard of it, right? So many things at the city. It's not just the decision, but it's also like how it was made, how it was communicated. I heard privately from some councillors they didn't like how it was brought up at all. I don't know. Were you surprised when you heard it at a press conference?
Maybe at a press conference. Not surprised by the announcement itself, but there are two things I'm looking at. thinking about this return to office. Number one, economic development. The city of Ottawa has a lot of interest in economic development, especially downtown. So I'm wondering if more workers do come back downtown, if we'll see an uptick in the economic development like so many businesses want downtown. The second thing is, guys, is whether city councilors will be returning to the council horseshoe or the committee rooms in person, all of them. I know a lot of them do attend in person, but they have the option right now to attend virtually.
Actually, Joanne, can I pick up on that
Please.
first question? I'll let you pick up on the second. So that first question about economic development and downtown, I mean, I think there's two trends that I've heard. Number one is there are a lot of people that are very resentful about being forced to go back downtown, and they say, you know, I'm going to bring a brown bag lunch every day now. And you know, this idea, if this is all about supporting, you know, supporting the local restaurants downtown, then, you know, if that's the only reason they're forcing me into the downtown core every day, then I'm not going to cooperate. There is, and I could, you know, there's a little bit of that going on. I mean, it's probably maybe more rhetoric than reality, but there's no doubt that, the impact on downtown revitalization, I think, will be fairly minimal, fairly modest. If you know, we've got an awfully big hill to climb on revitalization for the downtown core, and probably has more to do with people living down there as opposed to just an extra, you know, few thousand people coming down every day.
I think I was going to say the same thing. I think it will be good for, restaurants, people buying lunch, but, you know, pre-pandemic, it's still emptied out after work downtown. You go there on a Sunday, like, you know, down on Queen and Bank Street. I used to work there at CBC. There is nothing around. Like, Starbucks is closed, right? So how is that going to change? Like, how is that revitalizing it, right?
Well, the other challenge, too, is that I'm not actually sure that the federal government has the office space downtown that it needs to accommodate all these workers. And so one of the solutions has been, let's create these local work centers in places like Orleans and Canada, which is obviously much more convenient for people in those neighborhoods, and that's where they prefer to go to. So how much, you know, the full extent of how much will come downtown as opposed to staying out in the suburbs is yet to be determined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's interesting because you saw some people push back. This was not a decision that came to council, but I think it was Jeff Leeper that moved a motion to remove the delegated authority from the city manager to say, no, we're not going to have people come back full time. Yeah. That was a whole schmozzle of a discussion that did not succeed. You heard the city manager say, well, we're going to give lots of people options who don't necessarily have to come 5 days a week. But you also heard from councillors who said, no way. Like, they're upset for their residents, especially if they live far. You have, it was David Hill, I think, from Barhaven, who's like, people in my ward can't even get downtown on one ticket, right? They have to like, extend the transfer time. As well, they don't come in because, you know, you have Matt Luloff. We were talking about the, just a couple of days ago, there was a mammoth 8-hour planning meeting, and, you know, he attended it in his studio from home. He has a little recording studio there. He often doesn't come in because he's like, I'm going to daycare to pick up my kids. Yeah. And so it'll be weird if like all of the city office workers have to come back, but those rules do not apply to city council, right? Like, they're not the boss of city councilors. And so I think you're going to have this weird thing where councilors are like, no, I'm not going to come back every day.
Well, you know what?
That's kind of a weird situation you have, right?
And I think to your question, John, about whether we will see a return, I guess if we are going to see a return, we should have seen it already. Like, councillors setting the precedent for what's about to come. And I'm not, when I try to think about it, I'm not sure that there has been a noticeable shift in the number of councillors that are taking their calls remotely versus
I feel like
those
there's
that are
more
coming
people in person,
Okay.
and I think more at council than at committee. But again, I have not done the math, but anecdotally, that's what it seems to me. What do you think?
Yeah, as we close off, I'm just struck by how the culture has changed. I remember, like, pre-pandemic, the city was encouraging people to telework, right? It was called telework at the time, and so people were encouraged to stay at home if you can. Employers, please let your employees stay at home and work from home because it's going to, you know, help our transportation system. Of course, we were starting to build LRT, so there's a lot of construction happening at the time. But we just went through a period of time in the city of Ottawa of a lot of road construction. What hasn't been until, I would say, like early December, mid-December, where we saw the highway kind of get relieved a little bit. But contrast those times with now where we're saying everyone needs to come back. And so that's why I'm curious to see how the transportation network is going to handle all these people.
Well, John, I mean, the last point that I wanted to raise on this topic was, will there be consequences for this in 2026? We've got a municipal election. Now, granted, we're really talking, well, there's return to office for city workers, but we're really talking about federal workers. Will there be consequences at the municipal level for the federal return?
Well, I mean, the next election in the city could be the municipal election in October 2026. So if voters, really want to put their ire somewhere, will they put it on the municipal election, the mayoral candidates, the city councillor candidates? So it's a good question, We'll wait and see.
Okay, so let me turn to
yes.
turn to the big trend that I saw in 2025 that I think will continue in 2026, and that is the theme of provincial overreach. Now, we know famously that cities are the creatures of the provinces. We always hear that term, but the reality at the same time is that cities are being asked to do an awful lot, being asked to deliver a lot of the services that citizens expect of their government. Now, the challenge is that cities are being told to do this, but not given the resources to do it. And furthermore, in Ontario, over the last year, we've actually had a province that has been actively limiting their ability to advance these initiatives, advance these objectives. So I'll get the first example, and perhaps the most obvious, and the one that people will remember the most recently, is around speed cameras.
Oh,
so
terrible.
The Premier came in and said, these are just cash grabs. Cities are no longer allowed to implement speed cameras. And meanwhile, the cities, including Ottawa, are saying, well, wait a minute. This is a tool for road safety. And certainly in the case of Ottawa, it's a tool for raising revenue to advance that road safety agenda even further.
So in two ways, both by actually getting people to not speed, and the people who do speed, that money goes to road safety.
Exactly. So that's one where the province has been very ambivalent about whether it will provide any sort of compensating funds. It's provided a little bit so far, and it's certainly provided these very large signs that...
Yeah, those are nice.
But I think most people would say that's probably not going to have much of an impact. But so there's a real concern about how do we in the City of Ottawa finance our road safety budget. Another example is around bike lanes, and we just talked about congestion. And I think from any city they have to be asking the question: we have this problem with congestion. We realize that to solve it, one of the ways to solve it is to provide people with more choices for how they get around the city. And so if that choice includes biking, then we have to make it safe. And so now we're having a province that's saying, well, actually, we're not really, we're going to limit whether you can provide that choice or not. But I would say that perhaps the most serious example of this provincial overreach was around the provincial planning statement. I think I've got the acronym, the terminology there, right? This was about a year ago. The province came in and said, okay, cities, you've all got this urban boundary where developers can build inside the boundary but not outside of it. And what has happened in the past is every 5 years or perhaps every 10 years, a city would come along and say, do we have enough land to build the housing that we will need in the future? And if we do not, then we will expand the urban boundary. But that would be done very deliberately and through a process that was very transparent and very obvious to everyone, and it would be done on a regular basis. Now with the provincial planning statement, developers are allowed to apply for an expansion to the urban boundary whenever they want. And so we've seen this in Ottawa. We've probably seen it in other cities too, but certainly in Ottawa we've seen a couple of examples of this where this past summer, developers came to the city and said, we would like this parcel to be included in the urban boundary, and so they had to pay money to have that process done. And we had a whole pot about the appropriateness of the pricing of that process.
Which was also a transparency issue, but we won't get into that now.
And actually, in the case of Ottawa, with these urban boundary expansions, the city said no to the applications, and so they have now been appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And it's no secret that the OLT has a history of being more on the side of the industry. So we'll see how that ends up. But where this is a real issue for me is I look at this from a public finance perspective, is cities are losing their ability to control how they grow, and there's implications for our budget in terms of the choice we make around the patterns of growth. So growing out has historically been more expensive because we're building new infrastructure. We have to service and maintain that infrastructure. That's all very costly on an ongoing basis, as opposed to trying to build in where we can use existing infrastructure and we don't have to experience those costs. So, I mean, my question is really quite a fundamental one, is that are cities actually able to govern themselves?
Yeah. No, and to put it in the most boring terms possible, the fiscal framework in this country is very broken. And anybody who's like a policy nerd, especially in local government, they're always going, oh, the fiscal framework or the who pays for what. Yeah. And it's completely unfair to cities. They have one tool only, property taxes, which is actually a regressive tax because it's flat. Everybody pays the X percent, right? No matter how big your house is, how small it is, how much money you make, how little money you make. Like, if you think about the way the property tax system works, and who doesn't? Again,
every day.
Again, so
Every
much
day.
fun holiday chatter subjects we're coming up with. But, if the economy grows, you don't actually, the city doesn't actually benefit from that, right? Because it's not an income tax, it's not and it's not an income redistribution system. But, there's social issues on the street here. We know this. We know there's homelessness. We know there's addictions and mental health issues, food security. And people are like, we got to help people. And of course, people look to the city, and the city government wants to do something. They're the closest government to the people, but they don't have any money to do that. As a city, we do provide some funding to food banks. The demand on food banks has been tragically very high and increasing. But the province doesn't give any money to the food banks, right? In the meantime, as you say, we can't govern ourselves at all. The speed cameras, you'd think that is a basic thing. We don't even set the speed limit necessarily. It's sent at the province. But the idea that they would say, forget it on speed cameras, this is an issue of public safety. It is shocking, that decision. So you do start to kind of wonder.
Yeah.
I do think should be an appeal mechanism to anything. We go back to the official plan. Taywin, a very controversial piece of land, was put in, and no one was able to kind of appeal that. And the province, not only did they not, the housing minister at the time, not only did he not take it out, he put a bunch of land back in. Yeah. And so it was kind of a schmozzle. But I think there is a real question there on how much power the city has to deal with the issues it has. Ontario is the only province, for example, that has to, where the municipalities actually provide social services on behalf of the province. Some of that is funded with the province, but for example, paramedics, daycares, right? It does not happen in other provinces, so it's kind of bizarre. But it's also hard to know what to do about it. I think a lot of municipalities feel powerless, and you have this problem where you want to push back on the province, but you're also looking at the province for a lot of money, and you don't want to, you don't want to annoy them too much, because then what is the retribution? What do you think?
Well, especially in the city of Ottawa's case, right? So we have a premier who, hasn't hidden his interest into meddling in municipality and municipal governance issues ever since he's been premier, right? We've seen him talk about number of wards in some municipalities. You brought up some good points about, for example, the traffic cameras, bike lanes. And so if you're the city of Ottawa, you have also a government who's offering to upload the LRT, the Highway 174 costs. And so you have to be very careful, if you're Mayor Sutcliffe and the rest of council, about how you manage your relationship with Premier Doug Ford and right now the PC government. And so they're on eggshells, I think. Yeah. I think the city of Ottawa is on eggshells. And we saw even in the last week how the city of Ottawa has made it known that they want to be a candidate for this new defense infrastructure, but the defense bank, and maybe seeing if they can, I don't know if there's a bidding process, but then we see Premier Ford back the city of Toronto's opportunity, or Toronto's interest in getting the same project. And so it was interesting because I know Premier Ford was in Ottawa this week, and Mayor Sutcliffe would have had a meeting with him, so I would like to be a fly on the wall in that discussion.
Yeah, well, you know what? That was a really bizarre example. I'll tell you why. So this defense bank is an international bank. It's like the World Bank or any of these multilateral banks that are owned by owned by sovereigns, and then they, say, service an international clientele. And the idea is that Canada would bid to host this secretariat, and then it would be up to the Prime Minister to decide where it goes. And so the Prime Minister said, if we do it, we're going to do it in Ottawa. Meanwhile, you've got a provincial premier saying, no, we're going to do it. We think we should do it over here. So it's not
stabbing us in the back as a city.
Over something he has no control over.
It is brutal.
But that actually feeds into, I appreciate that we as a city are walking on eggshells because we rely on the province for a lot. But it doesn't seem to have gotten us a lot of good so far, right? We've been very moderated in our response to any of these provincial overreach, and most of it's been affecting Toronto, right? Let's be frank about this. But it's spilled over to all municipalities, and we as a city have not done much pushback. I don't think it's achieved us anything.
Well, I think there's two things. One, I think that cities do feel powerless because if you go back to 2018, Doug Ford was just elected premier for the first time in May. But there's an ongoing municipal election across the province. But he really loved Toronto, having been on that council. That's what he cares about. Sometimes that's good for us and sometimes not. But it was July, and he came in to say, I'm changing the boundaries of the wards to match provincial riding boundaries. And everyone went, there's candidates running, this is crazy. And so the Ford government was taken to court, and the judge actually said, okay, as much as I think this is a crazy decision, no, they have every right to do that, right? It's literally in the Constitution. And so fighting the province is it's... First of all, if you literally want to change the Constitution, that is a big deal. And you're going to need at least the top 10 cities, the biggest 10 cities in the province, to go in together and do that. And I don't think you're going to see that. So on the one hand, they're thinking, okay, legally, it's an uphill battle. And then secondly, for Ottawa, if the province actually uploads the LRT, which I'm skeptical about, but if it actually happens, it is a huge financial game changer. And so until that looks like it's really dead in the water, I can see why you want to not put that in jeopardy. But in the meantime, we're getting strung along and losing out on a lot of things that we should be doing at the city. So big problem.
Yeah. So Joanne, I just wanted to challenge you on that constitutional point. So you're right, and we certainly have that 2018 example from the changing the boundaries during the Toronto election. I mean, it's crazy an example as you could ask for. And the judge did rule in favor of the change. But I actually believe that with the what I've been told from a constitutional lawyer, and I think I've actually said this on the pod before, but I will repeat it because it's such an important point, and that's that the law evolves over time, and it only evolves as it gets tested and as it gets pushed. And because I think that we are asking cities to do more, but I think sooner or later a judge is going to come along and say, if you're going to ask cities to do all this, you actually need to give them the authorities required to be able to execute on it. So I think at some point a city or cities are going to push back and say, you can't do that. We need these revenues, we need these tools, whatever it is. And I would not be surprised at some point a judge will say, I agree constitutionally. The world has changed since the Constitution was written. And we just need to evolve with the times.
And I hope they do. It's not that I don't think so, but I in thinking about why cities don't push back on that. Yeah. Although, actually, and to your point, there is a case in Toronto of people bringing the Ford government banning bike laws. They brought it to the to court to challenge it under maybe the charter, I think, saying that it actually was a infringement on their safety, because
that's right.
And actually they won, and now that's being challenged by the provincials. Sure. And it'll be interesting to see if it gets to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, and that was brought by citizens. To your earlier point, I would actually like to see cities come together and push back. I mean, I think that cities do need to hold hands on this.
That's a last year of my term kind of action, I say, for a mayor. It's like, I'm done now, and you know what I'll do on my way out? I'll take the provincial government to court.
Well, and you bring up a good point. We're going into a municipal election year. Excuse me, and if you're running for re-election as mayor or looking to challenge the mayor, how much do you want to tick off the province right now, or tick off the premier, who can come out in front of a microphone and kind of say something and maybe tip the scale in the municipal vote? And so I wonder over the next 10 months, until the next municipal election, if we're going to see any acrimony really between City Hall, Ottawa City Hall, and the province.
Just to say something very cynically and political, this is a city with only one progressive conservative MPP. It is a city that generally does not like the Ford government's policies. And someone said to me, if I were running for mayor, I'm not, but if they were running for mayor, they would actually run against the Ford government. That is how they would set up the discussion, the public discussion. And so when so I'm kind of saying the opposite. You're like, well, if you're running for mayor, how much do you want to piss off? Can we say that? Sorry, the province. But maybe if you want to actually win, is that who you run against? I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
That's true, and that might indicate also. You mentioned there's only one MPP who's in Ottawa. Maybe that indicates Premier Ford's interest in Ottawa. He only has one MPP here. If no one else is on board with his party, then he'll work his magic, I guess, down in the GTA instead.
Yeah. Okay. So those are three big trends that we've identified that have happened over the course of 2025 that we think will continue into 2026. The other thing that we wanted to talk about today in our end-of-year wrap-up is look back at City Hall and talk about some of the best decisions of the year and some of the worst decisions of the year. But because we're optimists, we're going to save the best for last.
That's good. I like that. Yeah.
So why don't we do a round of what has been the worst decision out of City Hall in 2025? And John, why don't you start us off?
Well, I'm going to go to kind of the security, the new security barriers, security checkpoints at City Hall. And I'm torn here. I'm calling it the worst decision because the new security measures, the latest ones, came in, I think it was in the spring or late winter earlier this year, where people have to go through a metal detector, empty their pockets, usually can only enter through one part of City Hall during certain times of the day, of the week. But I just feel like City Hall is becoming less of the people's place. That I know former Mayor Jim Watson always talked about this. There are still museums inside. You can still access the main level and walk around, but the access has decreased. So even if you just want to check out City Council, the room itself, and show maybe your kids, this is where your municipal politicians meet every Wednesday, every second Wednesday. You can't even actually access that area. There's a barrier there. You can't actually see through the glass of City Council chambers. And, I think I've talked about this on the pod before. One time when I was in City Hall, I couldn't really move anywhere except going straight down the hall, past the rotunda area and out the other side. Of course, there's Service Ontario and Service Ottawa there. But it just feels, guys, like City Hall has become more restrictive of a place. And I say I'm kind of I'm double-edged on this because I get the requirements for security. People who work at City Hall need to feel safe. The political temperature that has risen over the years has made potentially politicians feel a little bit more unsafe in their own work environment. So I think you do have to protect the people inside that building. But on the other side, City Hall is a people's place. It does belong to the people. And before all the security measures came in, it was actually a great place just to roam around. Yeah. I think I've talked about this on the pod before when I was a younger person in Ottawa, my first co-op term in the city of Ottawa. It was in the winter around this time of year, and I loved just walking in and out of City Hall, going from the Golden Triangle neighborhood into Confederation Park, into the Rideau Centre and Byward Market. And I used the throughway of Ottawa City Hall as my kind of just as part of my path. But I really enjoyed the experience of just being able to wander around the building too. And as when we were covering City Hall as daily journalists too, it's just a wonderful. For me, it was my workplace in a way. I didn't work for the city. I worked for the local newspaper.
But we had offices in City Hall.
Yeah, and it was great just to be able to walk around and check out the building. And we had the Sports Hall of Fame at the time was there too. And of course the museums, many of them are still there. But I just feel that the City Hall has become more of a place that just does business. It's not really a place where you could just go and actually hang out if you want to.
I agree. I think, yes, I understand that political times have changed and people are more concerned about their security. When you're the government the closest to the people, there's good parts of that and bad parts of that. But I do think what has happened is a little bit of overreach. The fact you can't go into Marion Dewar Plaza there and no, the Jane Pickett Hall. I'm sorry, Marion Dewar is outside. The hall in front of council chambers. That is unfortunate. I'm not even sure that's necessary. As well, you know, that was a decision that was brought to council, already made by staff in camera. Again, there was never any public discussion about that, and people were just shocked to see that had happened. So I found that really unfortunate. I share your disappointment in that.
Yeah, you know what? I agree. Very disappointing. But I'd actually say that I don't actually feel that it does a lot to enhance security. So the people that are working in City Hall were already protected, blocked from the public. People, you know, would work on, let's call it the second floor. I mean, there's security access to get from the first floor to the second floor. So it actually, I don't know that it actually solves anything. It just, the term that I've used previously was this is just security theater, and it does. It's a shame because we often talk about this idea of third spaces, right? Like not your home, not your work, but third spaces where you can go, where you don't actually have to, you know, pay $5 for a cup of coffee, and those are disappearing. And City Hall was one of the last few great third spaces in downtown Ottawa, even if it was just to walk through. And we've lost it.
And it's also an important space during the dead of winter when it's really cold outside, or like scorching days of summer where people can just find some reprieve too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Joanne, what was your worst decision?
Well, I'm not going to say it's the worst. It's a bad decision, and I'm going to, because there were some troubling decisions that got a lot of airtime. Lansdowne 2.0, Taywin, the idea of taking Taywin out of the official plan, out of the urban boundary, which was pretty controversial, but that was kind of interesting. But I'm going to go with a bit more of an under-the-radar decision, and that was City Hall putting up a donation page on the website so you can pay your taxes, and if that's not enough for you, you can also donate to the city's programs and services. It is a bizarre idea, and here's where it came from. Last year around this time, December 2024, there's a motion put forward, I believe by Marty Carr, to say the city was going to examine a program to make it easy to donate to the city, and the idea was Toronto has one like this, and you know it raises like $900,000 a year. But the idea originally was, you know, if something happens at the city, or if there's a specific program, like for example, if there's a derecho or there was a tornado, and you want to like, oh, let's donate money to help this area or to help this particular project, then you could donate to it. And the motion specifically says that an analysis about how this would work was going to come back in the third quarter of this year. It did not come back. There's nothing. Suddenly, when it's budget week, we find out that there's a live page on the website that just lets you donate anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000, open to individuals, open to corporations, and it has no guidelines whatsoever. There's not even, I looked at the page again this morning before we recorded. It's still live. It's still up there. There's not even a notes section to say where you'd like this money to go, or what you'd like it to be directed to. What? And so, sure, what we've heard since then was, yes, there is analysis that's going to come back to the city next year to talk about how this might work. I'm like, well, then why is this page still up then? Like, the idea that you would put this page up without any discussion, without any parameters, without any guidelines. For example, maybe there should be a rule that if you're on the lobby registry, you shouldn't get to give money to the city. I don't know, but it's the complete backwards way of doing things. And so, to me, there's specific problems with this. Like, is this kind of could it be used as a wink-wink situation for a company or even an individual to donate in exchange for a favorable decision on council? I mean, that's a extreme example, but you never know what's going to happen, right? Because there's no rules around it. But to me, it's also that you know how I feel about transparency and accountability. And so it's a symbol of the slippage of accountability at City Hall. It is you know, we want people to trust government. We know people are having less trust in government. And when they do something like this, there's a complete head scratcher. You're like, why? Why would you do this? So to me, this is a bad decision. I'm not saying it's the worst decision, because I know that, whether it's Lansdowne 2.0 or whether something more like minor like this, you want to know that the city is thinking things through, doing things in a logical and responsible way, and this is not it.
Yes. Okay. You know what? We've got about 10 minutes left.
What?
Yes. We're
See, you were worried we couldn't talk for 1 hour, and I said no way.
Yeah, maybe we can just have a word with our audience here. We're doing 1 hour at the request of Rogers, given that they program in 1 hour blocks, and so we're able to have this extended discussion. What I'll say very briefly about my worst decision. Is Taywin. We had a couple of off ramps in 2025 where council could have pushed back and said, we're going to slow down Taywin, we're going to put the brakes on it, whatever. We had that opportunity through the infrastructure master plan. We had that opportunity through a motion brought to council by Councillor Kavanagh. City Council chose to not take those opportunities, and so we're going full steam ahead. Basically, Taywin is going to, as I've written about before, Taywin is, I consider it a 2% tax on all residents across the city. It's just a very expensive way to grow our city, and we just can't afford it. So I really wish we had taken the opportunity in 2025 to at least slow it down. But let's save a few minutes to talk about our best decisions.
Yay, happy times.
Okay, so who wants to lead off?
Mine is short and very sweet and great. Last year, council, I think, alarmed and just like shocked the city by saying that teenagers, like basically youths from 11 to 18, if they didn't have a pass through their school, they were going to have to pay full adult fares for OC Transpo. So like a 12-year-old has to pay a full fare. And people said, this is ludicrous. And council heard that. I'm very happy to hear. And this year, they moved a motion, and it was approved and included in the 2026 budget that as of Canada Day, youth will not have to pay to use the bus or LRT in the evenings, during the week, on the weekends, on holidays, and like in the summer. And I was so happy to hear this, because I think back to my own youth in Toronto. I took the TTC all the time from the time I was 12. And that is just, there was affordability for my family, who also had one car. My mom didn't even drive, and also they were not driving me anywhere. They were not up for that. They're busy working. So it's affordability, it's freedom and independence for youth. They can go out and do stuff. Maybe they're trying to get to their job at Bayshore Shopping Center or Place d'Orleans. And on top of that, it is... it engenders a love of transit when you're young, right? Those people, I hope, are going to grow up to say, no, we need transit, and fight for that and advocate for that. And I was so happy to see that. And I hope it is an indication of where we're going with transit fares, not just for youth, but for everyone, to make it more affordable. And that's my holiday wish.
That's very nice.
Yeah, no, that was great to see. That was great to see. And quite frankly, I wish we could do it the full day and just figure out some sort of agreement with the school boards about, because we know that I think part of the issue is during the day the school boards pay OC Transpo to take care of a certain amount of student transportation.
That's right, and if the city makes it free, then it means that the property tax payers are subsidizing the school board. So, but let's just get it together and just get free ones.
Exactly,
right.
unless the city could negotiate that in advance with the school board, so you've got certain responsibilities. But yeah, great move forward.
Yeah. And I would just say, I wonder if it's going to kick open a bigger discussion too about free transit to other fare classes too. We've seen it happen in the past. We talk about seniors on some days, and now youth. And I wonder in the next term of council if there's going to be more discussion about other people who should get free fares as well.
Yeah. So John, your best decision.
So my best decision has to do with Lansdowne, not necessarily Lansdowne, the large issue, but something very particular, and that's the arena. I think the city council got the arena size correct in the Lansdowne decision.
Controversial choice.
I know. But I just think that so it's about 6,600 people for a hockey game and more for entertainment, concerts, this kind of thing. But I do think that size fits this market quite well for a medium-sized entertainment facility. And I know the PWHL, who were very well represented when they came to City Council to talk about they need a bigger arena. And I know they want a bigger arena, but I do think they have an opportunity to hopefully, anyway, talk with the Sens about about using the arena in Canada or the brand new arena that's going to be built at Le Breton Flats. My sense is that arena that size is going to be perfect for what we need in Ottawa. We have the big arena that the Sens own and will own at Le Breton Flats. We have smaller music venues in the city too, and I think that between 6,000, 7,000 seat venue for entertainment, sports and entertainment is actually the right size. And I think it was the right decision for council at this moment, who can't peer into a crystal ball and just build a big new arena that might be bloated for whatever comes down the road. I think so. It was just the right decision for this moment.
Yes, well, listen, I'm with Joanne, that very brave, brave choice. But what would you say to the Charge fans?
I would say that there's still hope in Ottawa. I think that we have a large arena in Ottawa. It's in Canada. So people in Canada, that's great. People in Orleans, I don't know if they like that. But a new arena is going to be built in central Ottawa too. So I would expect the Charge would be speaking to the Sens. I'm sure the Sens are willing to speak to the Charge. So I think there's still a lot of hope for the PWHL and the Charge fans in the city of Ottawa.
Okay. Well, let me tell you about my best decision for 2025. And that was, I thought the housing action plan that came out quite late in the year was very good. Now, I had two caveats I've probably mentioned before. One was that this is a very good plan to encourage private builders to build more homes. It doesn't do what it needs to do necessarily to encourage more non-market housing, and I think that's actually what Ottawa needs as much as anything right now. We need non-market housing. So that's caveat number one. Caveat number two is that, as you know, I think that we're moving into an economic downturn. I think 2026 is going to be a pretty tough year for a lot of people, and I think home building is going to take a hit, and so I don't think we're going to see the supply response that we would hope to see. But, you know, thinking about this decision, it actually made me realize that there's a decision behind the decision that is even more important. And that's that I was really thrilled in 2025 to see the choice of the new general manager for housing planning development of Marcia Wallace. And for those that are unfamiliar with Marcia, she was previously essentially the city manager of Prince Edward County. Before that was an assistant deputy minister at the Ontario government dealing with a lot of municipal issues.
In the housing department, you should say.
In housing, that's right. And before that, a PhD candidate at University of Waterloo.
In urban planning.
In urban planning, thank you. Yeah, so a really terrific profile for the sort of candidate that we need. But what really impressed me was that one of the first interactions I saw of Marcia at City Council was a question around the housing action plan about, well, you know, if someone asked a question about how would, this is a retroactive credit, so how would it incentivize any sort of further action? And Marcia answered with a real answer, said, we don't know. Maybe that's the wrong decision.
Yeah, that's an excellent question.
That was the first time, and I don't know how many years, but I've heard a senior civil servant at the City of Ottawa come forward and say, you know what, maybe we were wrong, or maybe this is not the way forward, but we have to go back and examine it. You just don't hear that sort of language around the council table from staff, and so it was really refreshing. I think that we have a culture issue at City Hall that we're it's very small C conservative. It's very, what has worked in the past is what we will do going forward. We just haven't had a lot of embracing of risk, and so I think that we need senior civil servants that will buck that trend, and I hope that Marcia is one example of that will lead the rest of the staff forward.
I agree. I think Marcia is great. I would also like to point out it took 3 years to hire her, right? And so perhaps worth the wait, I don't know. But I mean, again, we need a dynamic leadership that are not just yes people, which is hard under the strong mayor's power, but you also have, you know, we still have an interim like a year and a half later, we have still an interim solicitor. We don't have a full-time head solicitor. We have, you know, we don't have a GM of transit still. So I hope that the example of Marcia is repeated across the city.
Okay. Well, listen, that's it for this week. That's it for this year.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yes. So listen, I'd like to thank the two of you for your insights as always. I'd like to thank all of our listeners for being with us today. And we will be back in the new year. Until then, this has been the Better Ottawa Municipal Panel.